Yeah, well, no, Mickey Burnett. She's an American woman. She's all into like the gospel being the I am God kind of thing, and it's been quite fun getting into debates with people on there with
Yeah,
her. Yeah, kind of finding the crowd really.
exactly.
So I just
All
crack
right.
on.
Yeah, where are
Oh,
we? Chapter 10?
chapter 10. Verily, verily, I am saying to you, but I'm just trying to get the context from this again. It's oh yeah, it's where he healed that blind man, isn't it? And then they're having a go at him,
Uh-huh.
and then he goes back to Jesus. He says, "I am believing," and he worships him. Yeah, and then Jesus, then in the Pharisees come and have a go at him again. Typical kind of context in the Gospels.
Yeah.
Verily, verily, I am saying to you, he who is not entering through the door into the fold of the sheep, but is climbing up elsewhere, that one is a thief and a robber. Now, he who is entering through the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper is opening, and the sheep are hearing his voice, and he is summoning his own sheep and is leading them out. And
Yeah.
whenever he should
I
be,
mean, it's the same context that we've been hearing, is that the door. The door is to that I am, you know. And he that comes in any other way, by any other way, if you haven't come by that, you're just a thief and a robber, you know.
yeah, I mean, it's how that he could say that the disciples would not be deceived. You know, it says it in Matthew, in the famous Olivet Discourse, and he goes, "And if it were possible, even my disciples would be deceived." And that's like if it were possible,
Exactly.
and that's why if they go, "He's here, he's there, he's over wherever," it's like, well, no,
Mhm.
mate, you ain't got it.
Exactly.
In a sense, also here, what Jesus is doing to the Pharisees, because I'm convinced when you read through these things, a lot of what Jesus was saying was to rile up the Jews, to
Uh-huh.
get them to murder him, to
Mm-hmm.
fulfill the prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
And to the Jews, he wasn't coming in through the door. The normal kind of legitimate route was through the priestly order to be born a
Exactly.
Levite, and he
Yeah.
didn't come through that to them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's again like people who like that like I've done this post on Instagram. It hasn't fully uploaded yet, but I was saying how we verify things by comparing statements to what they're about. And when people don't use that, when people don't say to you, "Oh, you can't trust your own understanding," "Oh, you can't trust your own ability to compare what I'm talking to what I'm talking about," "You've got to take me on faith," they're wolves, mate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I carry on.
Yeah.
Um, I'll just go back to the last sentence. And whenever he should be ejecting all his own, he is going in front of them, and the sheep are following him, for they are acquainted with his voice. And I think that's ejecting his own out of the Torah system, the Mosaic. Now, an outsider will they under no circumstances be following, but they will be fleeing from him, for they are not acquainted with the voice of the outsiders. Jesus told them this proverb, yet they know not what things they were that he spoke to them. Even to his disciples, they didn't quite get it. That's because he was talking of what was yet to come.
Exactly.
Jesus then said to them again, "Verily, verily, I am saying to you that I am the door of the sheep. All whoever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep do not hear them." He's speaking of the Old Testament now, all the Old Testament writers and the law and stuff like that. If you take him at his word, that's what he's
Uh-huh.
saying. I am the door. Through me, if anyone should be entering, he shall be saved, and shall be entering and coming out, finding pasture.
Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Okay. I'm on the phone right now.
It's okay. It adds a little flavour in life.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, through me, if anyone should be entering, he shall be saved, and shall be entering and coming out, and will be finding pasture. The thief is not coming except that he should be stealing and sacrificing and destroying. I came that they may have life Eonian and have it superabundantly. I mean, here again, the idea of stealing, sacrificing, and destroying. It's all what the old Torah was doing. The Pharisees were famous for stealing, and the whole system was sacrificial.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of Christians now, because they read that and they look at their life as they have it now, and they look at it before they were so-called saved, and then after they were saved, and it's the same. They're like, oh, something else. Oh, life Eonian. Oh, that's talking about hell and heaven.
Yeah, exactly.
I am the shepherd.
Even life more abundantly. Back in my former doctrine, when I was a communist, I used to believe Christ taught us to basically, in the scriptures, even the Old Testament speaks of this, that every man take not more when God dropped the manna out of heaven. No more, no less than as needed. So my former doctrine that I believed in was that Jesus was teaching the same thing, just that communism, sharing and loving. And I used to think, life more abundantly meant that life of just sharing and communion with others. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
But I have a more different outlook on that now. So
Which is,
it's just funny how we perceive things when we're in certain boxes.
yeah. I mean, it's to accept and live all of life now, not
Exactly.
to try and push it away all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I am the shepherd ideal. The ideal shepherd is laying down his soul for the sake of the sheep. Yet the hireling, not also being shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, is beholding the wolf coming, and is leaving the sheep and fleeing. And the wolf is snatching them, and is scattering the sheep. Yet the hireling is fleeing, for he is a hireling, and he is not caring concerning the sheep. I mean, there,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is in a sense, he's speaking as himself. He's going to be crucified. So there is that level to it. And then there's a level of what God does. God, he's this unified one, or this wholeness, but he separates himself and he distinguishes himself from himself. And that's our life. So
Uh-huh.
he sacrifices himself in a sense.
Exactly. And even I see something on another level here that he says the good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. So the main teaching that Jesus came to taught is to lay down your life. Because as long as you think you have a life and you're an independent life, you're always going to look out for yourself above others. You understand what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? But when you lay down your life, not only do you love this being called whatever your name is, but you also love all things because all things are one. And so that laying down his life is basically showing that there is no partiality because it also said God is not a respecter of persons. But when you tend to be an personal, when you seem to have an ego, most of the time this ego is out for itself. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so it correlates with the hireling that looks out for himself. When the wolf cometh, he scatters. You know what I'm saying? Leaving the
Yeah,
sheep.
yeah. And I've noticed sticking to the truth, being brutally honest about yourself. I think we inevitably fall into speaking as the everyman. You know, like
What
the
do you
statement I
mean?
put on the thing, the everyman. It's a kind of it's when certain people speak or say things, they're not speaking from their kind of about their individual life. That they're speaking about what's common to all men. So
Hmm.
I'm trying to speak as the everyman when I say we're all just self-obsessed little bastards that want to do stuff with each other.
Yeah,
It's kind of common to everybody, and,
exactly.
and and so when we brutally be honest with ourselves about ourselves, um, loads of other people start sticking up their heads and going, "Oh, me too, me too."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's true for the human being.
Yeah, yeah.
Human beings are in themselves, self-obsessed. You know what I'm saying?
But even Fox animals, they're all concerned about their own survival and
Exactly.
their own life. And then
Exactly.
it says elsewhere, God does all things for his own glory. So there's this
Exactly.
recurrent pattern. So I mean, it's that all the animals are playing different survival games. They've got different methods of achieving survival, and that
Mhm.
creates a different world. But what unifies it all is that we're all invested in this survival thing, invested in ourselves.
Yeah, I agree with that, but the sense I'm talking about is from when you look at the sense of the I am, right? I am when I speak of I am from my own experience, I'm not speaking of this body. I'm speaking of just experience. And so whether it be the TV or the book or this is all me. So I look at all things as God. You understand what I'm saying? So it isn't
Hmm.
just I understand what you're speaking is true, but what you're speaking, what I see is from the perspective of individual entities, as we would call them. But what
Yeah,
I'm speaking of is from the whole. So when I'm saying I'm not only obsessed with this physical body right here, but also all the things. Although
yeah.
in the play, this thing might take on its own personal,
It will
you
appear
know,
as self-obsessed, but in
yeah,
order to be self-obsessed, there has to be a context within which it can be self-obsessed, and I
exactly.
love that stuff. And the kind of but one of the main kind of defining features of the big I am, as you're speaking about it, is that it doesn't
Hmm.
care. It doesn't mind what
Exactly.
happens.
Yeah.
This thing here, it cares. It minds what happens.
Hmm.
But it exists within a context that doesn't care. It needs that doesn't care in order for it to care.
Exactly. You're right.
Hmm. Um, I am the shepherd, and I know mine, and mine know me, according as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and my soul am I laying down for the sake of the sheep. I mean, there it is. He's saying that his disciples know him just as the Father knows him. So he's
Hmm.
equating his disciples to his Father.
Exactly.
And other sheep have I, which are not of this fold. Those also I must be leading, and they will be hearing my voice, and there will be one flock, one shepherd. I've heard interpretations of that where people try and say it means other planets, or some people have said it's either like, I mean, in the sect that you came out of, where they believed that the black man was the Hebrew, and
Hmm.
in the sector I came out with, or I've heard people speak it where they believe the white man was the Hebrew, and they were
Hmm.
trying to say that Britain was the promised land that Jesus was talking about, and
Hmm.
I think in your group it would have been Ethiopia or.
No, Israel was, but I've heard of the Ethiopian Christians,
Mm,
but they believe that is Israel. I mean, even in that time when you hear of Jesus fleeing to Egypt, Egypt was full of dark skinned people. So Egypt couldn't have. I mean, Jesus couldn't have blended into Egypt if they were if Israel was white. You understand what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because, or even the story of Joseph. Joseph's brothers thought he was an Egyptian. You know what I'm saying? And so
Well, he sold him as a
if he was
slave to Egypt. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, they did.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So if he was white, I mean, they would have known, different. That's what. So that's where that belief came from. But that is neither here nor there for me
Yeah.
anymore.
I heard that a lot of the French Egyptologists, because they didn't want to ascribe any kind of sophisticated level of civilization to the black man,
Hmm.
they chipped off a lot of the statues' noses in Egypt.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that same
Yeah,
thing.
it's been whitewashed, hasn't it? It's all the races. You get thickos and clever people, no matter what the color.
Exactly.
Shall I carry on?
Yep.
Yeah. Therefore, the Father is loving me, seeing that I am laying down my soul, that I may be getting it again. No one is
Mm.
taking it away from me. I mean, that's the experience. This is why I think people who suffer and get to the suicidal state is so close
Right.
to enlightenment because you've let
Mhm.
go of yourself. If you're really there, you've let go of yourself. You don't want it anymore.
Exactly.
And then on the other side of that is, wait there. If I'm prepared to do that, then what can I do? It's just a little
Hmm.
flip, a short little flip.
Short little flip. You're right.
Um, Therefore, the Father is loving me, seeing that I am laying down my soul, that I may be getting it again. No one is taking it away from me. but I am laying it down of myself. I have the right to lay it down, and I have the right to get it again. This precept from my Father. Same as us. I can kill myself if I want, and I can carry on
Mm-hmm.
living if I want. It's up to me.
Exactly.
A schism came again among the Jews because of these words. Now many of them said, a demon has he, and is mad. Why are you hearing him? Yet others said, these declarations are not those of a demoniac. No demon can open the eyes of the blind. Now there came to be the dedications in Jerusalem, and it was winter. And Jesus walked in the sanctuary, in the portico of Solomon. The Jews then surround him, and they said to him, till when are you lifting our soul? If you are the Christ, tell us with boldness. Jesus answered them, I told you, and you are not believing. The works which I am doing in the name of my Father, these are testifying concerning me. But you are not believing, seeing that you are not of my sheep, according as I said to you. My sheep are hearing my voice, and I know them, and they are following me, and I am giving them life aeonian, and they should not by no means be perishing for the aeon, and no one shall be snatching them out of my hand. I used to believe that in a sense, one interpretation of that I used to go with before was a lot of his disciples they were kind of snatched away. You know that is it epistasis or something, the rapture, that it happened
Mm-hmm.
then, and that they're in space now bringing life to other planets. I mean, it could
Mm.
be. I don't know what game God's playing, but
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't have to be that.
Oh, okay.
It could be what you were saying about how the life Eonian thing is realizing the Father, then you see that you don't die, that you just come and go.
Mm-hmm.
My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all, and no one is able to be snatching them out of my Father's hand. I and the Father, we are one. Again, then,
No, I was just saying that verse 30 right there. I mean, that's in every religion. Every book you read, you're gonna find I and God are one.
hmm
You know. So I
but
mean
they don't.
that verse right there i- is a key non-dual verse. I and the Father are one. You
It
can't
is.
you can't reject that. Like you said when we were having that talk on Facebook with that guy. I don't know if you said it, but somebody said it. It's like no, you didn't say it. Another person said it. It's like you can't argue that Jesus is his father, and this is why so many sects come up about the Trinity, or is Jesus just a prophet? All these things come up because the understanding of God and Jesus being one is unfathomable to a human mind. Because how can a human be God? You know what I'm saying? And that's why people always tell you, oh, you're just, boosting yourself. Or you talk about your God, this, that, and the third, because they can't see past the flesh.
hmm they can't get past their dualistic thinking.
Exactly. Dualistic thinking. Yeah,
Mm. They can't see the hidden unity behind it.
exactly.
Um, Again, then, the Jews bear stones that they should be stoning him. Jesus answered them, many ideal acts I show you from my Father. Because of what act of them are you stoning me? The Jews answered him, for an ideal act we are not stoning you, but for blasphemy, and that you, being a man, are making yourself God. Jesus answered them, is it not written in your law that I say you are gods? In the King James and that, I'll have in italics small gods and stuff like that, but that's eisegesis. They're kind of trying to read into the text what isn't there.
Exactly. Hmm.
If he said those were gods to whom the word of God came, and the scripture cannot be annulled, are you saying to him, whom the Father hallows and dispatches into the world, that you are blaspheming, seeing that I said, Son of God am I? if I am not doing my Father's works. I mean, here when he says, "and the Scripture cannot be annulled," if Jesus said that, I think what he's doing, he's playing the game that I love to play when I debate Christians and some people. So the
Mm-hmm.
Christian game is they believe the Bible is the Word of God, right? And so that's got to be consistent. So you just play them at their own game, and you show them
Mm-hmm.
that they don't even believe what they profess to believe.
Yeah.
Uh, are you saying to him, whom the hallows and dispatches into the world, that you are blaspheming, seeing that I said, Son of God am I? If I am not doing my Father's works, do not believe me. Yet if I am doing them, and if ever you are not believing me, be believing the works, that you may be knowing and believing that in me is the Father, and I am in the Father. They sought then to arrest him again, and he came out of their hands. Again, he doesn't speak the truth explicitly there, I think. He's still being cryptic because he wants them to be angry and wild. But that's one way of looking at it. But another sense, it seems like he's really trying to get them to see. It's like, why don't you see? Bloody hell, just open your eyes. And if you don't
Mm-hmm.
believe what I'm saying, believe what I did. I made a man see that was blind.
Mm-hmm.
And he came away again to the other side of the Jordan, into the place where John was formerly baptizing. Remains there. And many came to him, and they said that John indeed does not one sign, yet all whatever John said concerning this one was true, and many believe in him there. Now there was a certain infirm man, Lazarus, from Bethany, of the village of Mary, and her sister Martha. Now it was Mary who rubs the Lord with attar, and wipes off his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was infirm. The sisters then dispatched to him, saying, Lord, lo, he of whom thou art fond is infirm. Yet Jesus, hearing it, said, This infirmity is not to death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God should be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. As then he hears that he is infirm, then indeed remains in the place in which he was 2 days. I mean, here, in a sense, it says here that the Son of God should be glorified, right? And we're
Mm-hmm.
all sons of God. And though it seems horrible what we're doing to the environment, how we're destroying this planet, the power us humans have is bloody glorious. There's no
Mm-hmm.
denying it. I mean, Hitler, what he did, I would not condone it. I would not say you should go out and do it. But that one man could inspire
Mm-hmm.
so many people to do that. There is something awesome about that.
Exactly. And that's why it states that David said to God, what is man that you even,
Thou
consider him,
considerest
basically.
him. Yeah,
Exactly.
you
And
made him a little higher than the angels, or like, you made him
lower.
master of all, lower than the angels. Yet you
Yeah.
make him master of all your creation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, there's one cool thing that can be done with the Bible and these sort of scriptures is try to prognosticate what the plan of the thing that speaks our thoughts is, because we only know we've only got a limited kind of awareness. We're not aware of the big scale things, and it could be he could have glorious kind of adventures in store.
Exactly.
In a sense, sometimes I think this kind of, because he's such a show off, it's a bit like
Mhm.
he kind of thinks, "What, you like that, do you? You ain't seen nothing yet, son," kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, I've been having kind of debates with my dad about it because he wants to believe in the resurrection because he wants to see his grandma and his family again, and that would
Mhm.
be lovely. And I'm like, look, Dad, the thing is, there are no commands. And then what people often do is they understand the truth, and then they try and say to themselves, the mind will start saying, "Oh, that means this can't happen, or this can't happen." It's not what it
Mhm.
means at all.
Exactly. I agree because I tend to even I think we'll read it here later in this chapter about things like heaven and hell, resurrection. All I can speak from is my experience. So when I hear about resurrection in the scriptures, from all I can see is that being this I am, there's no greater place. This is heaven from my experience. Okay. But that doesn't mean that I can't tell you what the next experience is going to be. You understand? So I don't try to kill anybody's belief in a future heaven or a kingdom where everything is roses. But from what I can experience, no experience can fulfill being I am. That's all
Yeah, yeah.
So
When you're seeking, no experience will be the end. You'll keep going, oh, but then what? But then what? But
exactly.
then
And
what?
then what? You know.
Um, Thereupon, after this, he is saying to his disciples, we may be going into Judea again. The disciples are saying to him, Rabbi, the Jews now sought to stone thee, and art thou going there again? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours a day? If anyone should be walking in the day, he is not stumbling, for he is observing the light of this world. Yet if anyone should be walking in the night, he is stumbling, for the light is not in him. He said these things, and after this he is saying to them, Lazarus, our friend, has found repose, but I am going that I should be awakening him out of sleep. The disciples then said to him, Lord, if he has repose, he shall be saved. Now Jesus had made a declaration concerning his death, yet they suppose that he is saying it concerning the repose of sleep. Jesus then said to them with boldness then, Lazarus died, and I am rejoicing because of you, that you should be believing, seeing that I was not there. But we may be going to him. Thomas then said to his fellow disciples, we also may be going, that we may be dying with him.
No, I had to talk to somebody. But since you stopped there, even this, he's saying a deep truth in this when he's saying our friend Lazarus sleepeth, because I want to quote Ramana Maharshi. He said in one of these books, he said, sleep is temporary death, and death is just a longer sleep, you know. But when we tend to think of death, we think of it as like the end, you understand? But all these things are just experiences, you know what I'm saying? They're not the end of anything. And so
Mm?
when he says sleep, I think he's pointing to a deeper truth that all death is a sleep. You know, it's a longer sleep, basically.
Mm-hmm. Like Alan Watts says, what was it like to go to sleep but never wake up? And what's it like to wake up never having gone to sleep? And
Exactly.
I think everything's an experience. I think you got, because an experience is part of a dualism. You got experience and no experience. It
Hmm.
implies its opposite.
Exactly.
And I think both things kind of exist or
Hmm.
are.
Yeah, and that's what I was listening to your Manly P. Hall reading about Socrates, and that's one of my favorite philosophical writings of Phaedo, when he talks to Phaedo about death, and he mentions you know and he questions Phaedo like, okay, doesn't if something's bigger, doesn't it come from something that was smaller? In order for you to say something is bigger, it had to first be smaller. And and of course, if you say something smaller, that had to come from something that was bigger. And so he breaks down these, even hot. For something to be hotter, it came from something that was cooler or colder, and vice versa. And then he breaks down even life, because he was talking to one of his brothers about death and where the soul goes after death. And he says, so it is with life, you know. Or he also mentioned waking, like you said, Alan Watts. He said, doesn't awakening come from sleep and sleep from awakening? And so does life and death. It's the same thing. Life comes from death and death comes from life. You know, they
Yeah.
both follow each other.
I mean, a thing is only hot to you if you're cold to it. That's
Exactly.
the only way it works.
Yeah.
Where are we? Jesus then, on coming into Bethany, found he has been in the tomb 4 days already. Now, Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 15 stadia off. Now, many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary that they should be comforting them concerning their brother. I'm just not related, but still from the scriptures. There's another verse that points to non-duality. I can't remember where it is, but it goes in all your tribulations or in all your sufferings, God or he suffers with you. He's there doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Martha then, as she hears that Jesus is coming, meets him. yet Mary was seated in the house. Martha then said to Jesus, Lord, if thou wert here, my brother would not have died. But even now I am aware that whatsoever thou shouldst be requesting of God, God will be giving to thee. Jesus is saying to her, your brother will be rising. Martha is saying to him, I am aware that he will be rising in the resurrection in the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who is believing in me, even if he should be dying, shall be living. I mean, this just says that what you're saying about what the resurrection meant.
Exactly. And
It,
plainly, it says it right there. And that's why, even when you read Paul's scriptures in Romans, he says he equates that same thing. So when I look at Jesus' own death and resurrection, like I said, I don't discount anybody if they believe that actually happened. I'm neither here or there on that. What I'm saying is look at the deeper um, thing it's pointing to, because right here he says, I am the resurrection. Although a person dies, he will never die, basically, although the body seems to die. It
yeah,
says,
if he should be
whosoever
dying,
liveth and believeth in me shall never die. And so if he's the resurrection, that resurrection is already in you. I mean, that's what I experienced. I experienced going from, or Paul says the same thing in Colossians chapter 1, I think around verse 12. He was talking about, I have entered into the kingdom. I have been translated from darkness to light, and he says he was in the kingdom already as he liveth.
mm-hmm.
And this is what I understand it to be. So if one believes in a future resurrection, I mean, some signs point to that, but I'm neither here or there on that, because it doesn't matter to me. Like
Yeah,
that, it's neither pleasing. I could live in the pits of hell, and I'm still at peace in that what I am. You understand what I'm
mm-hmm.
saying? So
And it's like if it for me if it's true, good. Yeah, I'll see my grandma again. I'll see people that I miss again. I'll take that if you want to give it to me. But if not, I'm happy. I'm quite content.
exactly.
And with Jesus' resurrection, and like as I keep saying in my blog and my vlogs and that, you verify a statement by comparing it to what it's a statement about. We ain't got access to that anymore.
Exactly.
And so all these people, these Christians saying, "Oh, you got to believe in the death and resurrection," they're asking you to lie.
Exactly.
Yet Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who is believing in me, even if he should be dying, living. And everyone who is living and believing in me should by no means be dying for the eon. Are you believing this? She is saying to him, Yes, Lord, I have believed that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. And saying this, she came away and summons Miriam, her sister, covertly, saying, The teacher is present and is summoning you. Now, as she hears, she was roused swiftly and came to him. Now Jesus had not as yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha meets him. The Jews then, who are with her in the house and comforting her, perceiving Mary, that she rose quickly and came out, follow her, supposing that she is going to the tomb, that she should be lamenting there. Mary then, as she came where Jesus was, perceiving him, falls at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if thou wert here, my brother would not have died. Jesus then, as he perceived her lamenting, and the Jews coming with her lamenting, mutters in spirit, and disturbs himself. And he said, Where have you placed him? They are saying to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus weeps. The Jews then said, Lo, I think he was weeping there over their suffering, their pain, because he felt
hmm
it with them. The Jews then said, Lo, how fond he was of him. And he wasn't weeping over Lazarus, he was weeping over them.
Exactly.
Yet some of them said, Could not this one who opens the eyes of the blind man also make it that this man should not be dying? Jesus then again, muttering in himself, is coming to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and a stone was laid on it. Jesus is saying, Take away the stone. I'd like to know what he was muttering to himself, what he was
hmm
saying.
Exactly.
Martha, the sister of the deceased, is saying to him, Lord, he is already smelling, for it is the fourth day. I love the King James rendering of that. He already stinketh.
Yeah.
Jesus is saying to her, did I not say to you that if ever you should be believing, you should be seeing the glory of God? They then take away the stone. Yet Jesus lifts up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hearest me. Now I was aware that thou art hearing me always, but because of the throng standing about, I said it, that they should be believing that thou dost commission me. I mean, here he was saying, like about to see the glory of God, and the glory of God is that He gives life,
Hmm.
and that's we're surrounded by life, and he's
Exactly.
pointing and he's saying that God is that which makes alive. Is He?
Hmm.
That's what spirit means. That in Hebrew ruach or in Greek pneumos, it just means animating force.
Exactly, and that's our essential nature, you know.
Hmm.
But we have looked away from it and believed that we died and we live in a world of death.
Hmm.
I mean, it's that simple.
And saying these things, he clamors with a loud voice, Lazarus, hither, out! And out came he who had died, bound feet and hands with winding sheets, and his countenance had been bound about with a handkerchief. Jesus is saying to them, loose him and let him go. I mean, the imagery, I mean, if you want to give it a kind of symbolic interpretation here, he's bound with these wrappings after being made alive. And that's like how you can have the salvation experience. And those wrappings, I think, are a symbol of the law of good and evil. And
Hmm.
you can still be bound by them and they'll still ensnare you. And
Yeah,
you're dead or a living dead.
exactly. And even where if we back up a little, he says, "Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me, and I know that you always hear me, but because of the people which stand by, I say it." Meaning, and this is even why people be like, "Well, God's up in heaven," because Jesus told you to pray, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom
Hmm.
come, thy will be done." So he's speaking to the people who only see duality in dualistic terms, but he already knows him and the Father are one. So the only reason he said, "Father, thank thee," is so that they can believe who saw me say that. You understand?
Yeah. Many of the Jews then who come to Mary and gaze at what Jesus does believe in him. Yet some of them came away to the Pharisees and told them how much Jesus does. The chief priests and the Pharisees then gathered a Sanhedrin and said, what are we doing, seeing that man is doing many signs? If we should be leaving him thus, all will be believing in him, and the Romans will come and take away our place as well as our nation. I think they're being deceitful there. I think they're jealous they're really jealous of what Jesus is doing. They want to be able to do that. They want to have that power.
Yeah, and back when I was in my communistic view of the Bible, I used to think Jesus was a political revolutionary trying to overthrow a capitalist system to
Hmm.
basically make Israel a socialist, because you can't go straight from capitalism to communism. You got to go through socialism. So he's going to try to turn them into a socialist state. But and as you read this, I used to believe, it says the Romans are going to come take away both our place and nation, because they see how much power Jesus was gaining amongst the nation. You know what I'm saying? And so these Sanhedrin, who were just puppets of the Romans, wanted to keep that power, and so they wanted to, off Jesus basically. You understand what I'm saying?
Hmm. It's funny, they actually released Barabbas. He was a kind of political revolutionary, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a communist. I think that what Marx says and he got the kind of development spot on, and it's right. But that isn't what Jesus is talking about.
Exactly.
But I think it is the kind of way reality is kind of run, like from reality is a kind of self-organizing structure from the ground up. And
Hmm.
this thing here, being a wage slave, is a communist because if you look at political things or economic things, you got to bring it down to the question of what's in it for me. And if you're not
Hmm.
bringing it down to that question, somebody else is going to use you to achieve their what's in it for them.
Hmm.
But no, the Bible isn't putting that forward. Though the disciples did live communistically after they shared all their
Exactly.
wealth and stuff. It's just
Hmm.
sensible.
Exactly.
Um, where are we? Now, a certain one of them. Oh, do you know Caiaphas? I've heard this interpretation that when Jesus was interrogated by Satan after being baptized, that was
Mhm.
really Caiaphas, the high priest, because he said he is God, and then he brings him out, and then the Caiaphas is trying to make it trip him up, try to make him say some blasphemy, so that he can justify killing him. I'm not sure how
I
true
don't
that
know.
is.
I've never heard that.
Hmm. Now, a certain one of them, Caiaphas, being the chief priest of that year, said to them, You are not aware of anything, neither are you reckoning that it is expedient for us that one man should be dying for the sake of the people, and not the whole nation perish. The funny thing is the whole nation did perish eventually.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now this he said, not from himself, but not from himself, but being the chief priest of that year, he prophesies that Jesus was about to be dying for the sake of the nation, and not for the nation only, but that he may be gathering the scattered children of God also into one. From that day, then, they consult that they should kill him. Jesus then no longer walked with boldness among the Jews, but came away thence into the country near the wilderness, into a city termed Ephraim, and there he remains with his disciples. Now, near was the Passover of the Jews, and many went up into Jerusalem out of the country before the Passover, that they should be purifying themselves. They then sought Jesus, said, standing with one another in the sanctuary, What do you suppose? That he may under no circumstances come to the festival? Now, the chief priests and the Pharisees had given directions that if anyone should know where he is, he should be divulging it, so that they should be arresting him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shall I carry on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jesus then, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was who had died, whom Jesus rouses from among the dead. They make then for him a dinner there, and Martha served. Now Lazarus was one of those lying back at table with him. Mary then, taking a pound troy of veritable nard attar, very precious, rubs the feet of Jesus, and wipes off his feet with her hair. Now the house was filled with the odour of the attar. Now Judas of Simon Iscariot, one of his disciples, who was about to give him up, is saying, Wherefore was not this attar disposed of for 300 denarii and given to the poor? Now this he said, not that he cared concerning the poor, but that he was a thief, having the coffer also, and bore what is cast into it. Jesus then said, Let her be, that she should be keeping it for the day of my burial. For the poor you have always with you, yet me you have not always. The
Yeah.
ra-
And this statement, I mean, this statement was quoted in the Old Testament, but this is what made me question my beliefs. This statement, because when I used to believe about the kingdom of heaven, I believed that heaven was a place on earth where everybody would be treated equal. Like that's what I thought Jesus was coming with, this communistic system. But then if Jesus said you're going to have the poor always with you, then it couldn't be like that. You know what I'm
mm,
saying? Because it's always going to, poor are always going to be. But even in Israel, when they established this social, because when they came out of Egypt, they established the laws, which are basically a socialistic system where everybody got what every man needed.
mhm,
It was still poor among them. And then that began to make me think, I mean, people are different. So even if you gave every man in America a plot of land and seeds to work with and animals or wherever, all over the world, it would still be people who would want to go do drugs and maybe spend all their money on drugs and end up poor. You know what I'm saying? This is just the nature of life. And so that had me thinking about what is heaven. another way because it can't be something physical. You know what I'm saying? And that's what started my journey into esoteric teachings and things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, even if everybody does make the right decisions and is wise with their money, there's still a random aspect going on, and that will
Hmm.
create instability and inequality.
Exactly.
In treating everybody equal, I don't believe in that. I think you should treat people in their terms. Let them set the kind of tone of how you treat them. It's like
Hmm.
in my job being a support worker, there's like this kind of policy thing. They're saying you got to treat them like an adult. You're not
Hmm.
meant to say like good boy and stuff like that. But some of
Hmm.
them they got like a mental age of a 3-year-old. They want to be
Exactly.
called a good boy. So you pat
Yeah.
them on the head and call them a good boy. It's just why
Hmm.
not?
Yeah.
Um, where is it? Well, did you say that the poor you have with what you always is quoted in the Old Testament?
Yes.
I didn't know that. The vast throng, then, of the Jews knew that he is there, and they came, not because of Jesus only, but they might become acquainted with Lazarus also, whom Jesus rouses from among the dead.
Well, let me
Yeah,
say, I believe it is. I haven't looked in a while, but I believe it's in the Old Testament.
it wouldn't surprise me. Jesus quoted the Old Testament left, right, and centre.
Hmm.
He was to trap them all. He was speaking cryptically using their own scriptures, so
Exactly.
he keep them in their sin. That was his intention. As it
Mm.
says, like somewhere where his disciples come up to him and they ask him, "Why do you speak in parables?" He says, "So that seeing they may see but not perceive, and hearing they may hear but not understand, lest they hear with their ears and see with their eyes and come to me and repent, and I save them." So he's
Hmm.
explicit there about what he's doing. Um, Yet the chief priests also plan that they should be killing Lazarus also, for many of the Jews went because of him and believed in Jesus. On the morrow, the vast throng who are coming for the festival, hearing that Jesus is coming into Jerusalem, get fronds of palms and came out to meet him, and they clamoured, saying, Hosanna! Blessed is he who is coming in the name of the Lord, and the King of Israel. Now Jesus, finding a little ass, is seated on it, according as it is written, Do not fear, daughter of Zion. Lo, your king is coming, sitting on an ass's colt. Now these things are not known to his disciples at first. The funny thing, when I had my first kind of enlightenment experience, where I started waking up to it, when I was sectioned, I did literally think that I was the second coming of Jesus. And if I had the money, I'd have got a plane over to Israel and would have started trying. I mean, it was the only interpretation I had to hand that made sense of what was going on.
Uh-huh.
Not that I also thought I felt like I was the butt of this massive joke, and everybody was in on it.
Hmm.
And in a sense, it's true. We are the butt of this joke, and everybody is in on it, but they don't know they're in on it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, where is it? Where were we?
I think
Oh
16
yeah,
maybe.
Hosanna! Blessed is he who is coming in the name of the Lord and the King of Israel. I mean, that's what Jesus is doing. He knows what the prophecies are, and he's deliberately going out to fulfill them.
Hmm.
Now, Jesus, finding a little ayah. Now these things are not known to his disciples at first, but when Jesus is glorified, then they are reminded that these things were written of him, and these things they do to him. The throng, then, which is with him when he summons Lazarus out of the tomb and rouses him from among the dead, was testifying. Therefore also the vast throng meets him, for they hear that he has done this sign. The Pharisees said to themselves, You are beholding that you are benefiting nothing. Lo, the world come away after him. Now there were some Greeks from among those going up, that they should be worshipping in the festival. These then came to Philip, who is from Bethsaida of Galilee, and they asked him, saying, Lord, we want to become acquainted with Jesus. Philip is coming and telling Andrew, and again Andrew and Philip are coming and telling Jesus. Yet Jesus is answering them, saying, Come has the hour that the Son of Mankind should be glorified. I mean, the very fact that what he means what he's pointing to there is this crucifixion when he is physically killed.
Mm-hmm.
That's indicating the kind of resurrection that when you die, maybe you go back into that oneness and wholeness and you realize your glory.
Mm-hmm.
Verily, verily, I am saying to you, if a kernel of grain falling into the earth should not be dying, it is remaining alone. Yet if it should be dying, it is bringing forth much fruit.
Yeah,
He
and
who
that right there, that sentence right there, verse 24, it says, "Truly I stand to you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone." And the deep symbolism in this statement is that as long as you remain that independent self, that kernel of corn or wheat, right, you abide alone. But you have to die, even though he's speaking of. That's why I think his physical death and resurrection is a symbolism of what we go through while we're living. It's because unless you die to self and that self falls away, and you see all that has been holding the self, taking care of the self. When Christ says, um, look at the birds of the field, look at the lilies. Why do you always seek to feed yourself and clothe yourself as the nations do? Don't you know that God takes care of you? You understand? And we've been the whole time thinking we take care of ourselves. And so, unless you die to that, you're going to abide as an individual seeking your individual pleasures and things.
mm-hmm.
But he who dies to that bringeth forth much fruit, not only to the love of that body and your thoughts and your feelings, but to all things. You understand?
Yeah. I mean, like in the parables concerning the kingdom of heaven, saying it's like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of all seeds. It grows up into
Mm-hmm.
being this massive plant, and
Yeah.
all the birds come in it and they get shade and bowers. And then
Yeah.
also the imagery of what happens to the seed. It goes into the ground, it splits and it cracks, and then the roots go out and it intermingles and interconnects with all the ground, and then it goes
Mm-hmm.
up.
Yep. Same. Yep. Another symbolism. That's great.
He who is fond of his soul is destroying it, and he who is hating his soul in this world shall be guarding it for life reunion. I mean, here I think like my last kind of suffering experience was with the girlfriend I was with before,
Mm-hmm.
and before then, the urge for a sexual relationship had been in the driving seat of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that urge, funnily enough, it didn't lead to me acting rationally in order to go out and get sex and stuff like that. It left me locked up in my room, kind of ashamed and kind of not really doing it. But now that I've had it and I've realised that that's not what I really need, what I really want. I want to have connection with somebody as well. I
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to talk to a pussy as well as fuck it, kind of thing. But
uh,
it's like now, now that I've let go of that, and I'm not so concerned about how women are perceiving me, I'm being more myself, and I'm acting in a way that might just attract a nice lady, kind of thing.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, if anyone,
Right here in verse 25, he was just stating the same thing I said in 24, even though I didn't even see this coming. But he that loses his life, he that loveth his life shall lose it. Meaning, if you love this life in this world, it's going to eventually go back to the dust. You're going to lose it. But he that hateth his life, and hate doesn't mean like you hate. It just means love less. If you love less your life in this world, you shall keep it. Or if that life falls away, you're going to find eternal life simply.
well, the word that this one translates it as, and it's probably quite more accurate, but I don't think it matters whether it's accurate or not. Is the soul, and in Genesis it says that he formed man out of the ground and he breathed into it and it became a living soul. So that's
Mm-hmm.
referencing this body. This body is the
Mm-hmm.
soul. It's not that there is a body, a soul, and a spirit. This body is the soul,
Yeah.
and it's he that
Okay.
hates this body, this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It goes on to that. And then even hatred, that's what suicide is. You hate this life, you hate yourself, and you want to get rid of it. You want an out. But that can lead to the most glory.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone should be serving me, let him be following me, and where I am, there my servant also shall be. And if anyone should be serving me, the Father shall be honoring him. Now is my soul disturbed, and what may I be saying? So Jesus is there saying, my body is disturbed. He's probably having anxiety. He knew what was coming, and he was shitting bricks. He
Mm-hmm.
must have been shitting bricks because crucifixion ain't a pleasant affair.
Uh,
Now is my soul disturbed, and what may I be saying? Father, save me out of this hour? But therefore came I into this hour. Father, glorify thy name. A voice then came out of heaven. I glorify it also, and shall be glorifying it again. I mean, in a sense, this is speaking to us as well when we're near that deathbed. And I'm pretty sure that no matter how, I think even if you're really kind of enlightened or awake or whatever, and I use quotation marks there intentionally, it's like when death's coming and you know it's coming, you're still going to be shitting it. This body's still going to quake
mm-hmm.
because it's a final leap of
Yeah,
faith that you're forced to make.
exactly. I agree. I mean, Christ shows it that I know, but see, because I know, like you said, he even knew he would be resurrected because he said it earlier in the last chapter that I choose to lay down my life so I can gain life. I think he said or something similar to that.
Yeah,
So he already knew he was eternal, but all experience brings different sensations and feelings. You know what I'm saying? So even uh so even the feelings and the feelings that come with death, they still are there. You understand what I'm saying?
hmm
And they're still intense. And so he had gone through that. There's a story about um, a Advaita teacher back in the 8th century who went to a king, right? And he was talking about how the world is imaginary. You know, it's an imaginary. It's like a dream. And so the king set him up to have an elephant chase him, since he believed this world is a dream, right? And so when he came to the king, the king let the elephant go, and he saw the man run up into a tree, and he said, "Ah, I got you. Your teachings are fake." He said, "I thought you said the world is imaginary." He said, "Well, yeah, it is. The imaginary elephant chased an imaginary person up a tree." You understand? And so it's not that the person doesn't have these feelings of fear and stuff. I mean, it's in the story. You understand what I'm saying? But the one
yeah.
behind it who sees it all cannot be touched by anything in the story,
Mm.
basically.
So Alan Watts talks about like a really groovy guy is one who realizes that he's poor little me and big grand God at the same time, and plays it
Mm-hmm.
from that kind of level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the throng then, which stands and hears it, said, "A thunderclap has come." As is said, a messenger has spoken to him. I mean, I think does that? Do you think that points to that the voice didn't clearly say what it said, or do you think they just couldn't believe that the thunder was saying that?
Hold on. The people stood and heard it. Said,
Because like voice sent out of heaven, I glorify it also, and shall be glorifying it again. The
uh-huh.
throng then, which stands and hears it, said, "A thunderclap has come." As is said, a messenger has spoken to him. Oh, there. No. Jesus answered and said, "Not because of me has come this voice, but because of you. Now is the judging of this world. Now shall the chief of this world be cast out. And I, if I should be exalted out of the earth, shall be drawing all to myself."
Hmm.
Now this he said. Did you want to say something?
Nah, keep going.
Now this he said, signifying by what death he was about to be dying. The throng then answered him, "We hear out of the law that the Christ is remaining for the eon. And how are you saying that the Son of Mankind must be exalted? Who is this Son of Mankind?" Jesus said to them, "Still a little time, the light is among you. Be walking while you have the light, lest the darkness may be overtaking you. And he who is walking in the darkness is not aware whither he is going. As you have the light, be believing in the light, that you may be becoming sons of light." And I think at certain times, I think supernatural things, or what we call supernatural things, um, they occur. and like say at this time it could have been all those supernatural events were happening, and in my own life, when I was going through those kind of awakening experiences, I would have random people just coming up to me in the street, saying like, "Oh, everything you seek, you will find." I had just a random stranger just come up to me and just say that. And then
Mm-hmm.
one time it was I was walking in the park. I mean, it's just maybe given a kind of mystical signification to coincidence. But like the last time I was going through this, I was out walking my dog, and I didn't even see this woman there because it was so dark, and I was just distracted. And then suddenly I just heard her say, "I'm lost. Can you help me find my way?" And then I just walked her to where she wanted to go because I knew where it was. And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like there are times when they're called like synchronicities. They just occur, and then you enter into this almost magical realm for a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Um, these things Jesus speaks. Oh yeah, and then the darkness that they had their hearts hardened. It talks about how the Jews had their hearts hardened. Um,
Mm-hmm.
these things Jesus speaks, and coming away, he was hid from them. Yet after his having done so many signs in front of them, they believed not in him, that the word of Isaiah the prophet, which he said may be being fulfilled. Lord, who believes our things? And the arm of the Lord, to whom was it revealed? Therefore they could not believe, seeing that Isaiah said again, that he has blinded their eyes and calluses their heart, lest they may be perceiving with their eyes, and should be apprehending with their heart, and may be turning about, and I shall be healing them. I mean, it says it explicitly there. And then you have these Christians who are saying it's of us to believe, it's on us. But no, God hardeneth whom he will, and have mercy on whom he will.
It's that simple.
These things Isaiah said, seeing that he perceived his glory, and speaks concerning him. See, and this makes me think that the New Testament wasn't taking the Old Testament seriously, because there's I think it's in Luke. It references Emmanuel, that means God is with us, saying that a child shall be born. But you go back to the context, and I think it was the king of Judah was scared about Israel teaming, or Samaria teaming up with where Damascus was. Syria, I think it
Yeah.
wasn't called Syria back then.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the prophet, I think it was Isaiah, who says to him, "Look, so that you may feel that no." He says to him, "Look, you'll be fine. Don't worry. They won't win against you. Their collusion will be dismantled." And then Isaiah says to the king, "Ask of me a sign, that you may believe this." And then the guy goes, "Oh, I can't possibly ask for a sign. Because you haven't asked for a sign, I'll give you this sign." And so you look at the temporal kind of, you interpret that, and it had to happen within like the period of when that king was king,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what it was
Yeah,
for.
exactly. So Isaiah 7, yeah, and you see that a lot, that the Old Testament is specifically speaking to something that happened during that time, but the New Testament writers equate it to Christ. And what
Yeah.
I just think it is that really, like he said, or like whoever the writer of Hebrews is, whether it be Paul or whoever, says that, lo, I come in the volume of the book. So this I am, or whatever it's speaking of, comes in the volume of the book. So they take certain instances that happened in their history, or prophecies, or whatever, and just attach it to the story of the one who the world manifests in,
Hmm.
as the scripture speaks. So you could read most, if not all, of the prophecies that attached to Jesus were already fulfilled in the Old Testament. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
I mean, there's a history of it, isn't there? Like they were constantly using their escape from Egypt to interpret and
Exactly.
understand their incarceration in Babylon.
Hmm.
Uh, these things, as I said, seeing that he perceived his glory, and speaks concerning him. I mean, but that's Paul also talks later on, doesn't he, about how we perceive the mystery that the prophets to look into, but they could not.
Hmm.
And so here it's saying that these things, that it's saying that Isaiah perceived it, so it's contradicting itself, and that's because
Exactly.
the Bible is a damn good guru, and a good guru is
Hmm.
somebody he will have power over you, but to give up that power. So at
Mm-hmm.
first, if you played your game consistently, or not your game, but the Christian game consistently, you would find these contradictions, and then you would realize that this is just speaking from the same authority as you speak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Howbeit, likewise, of the chiefs also many believe in him. But because of the Pharisees, they did not avow it, lest they may be put out of the synagogue, for they love the glory of men rather than even the glory of God. Now,
Yeah.
Jesus, yeah, that's what keeps us trapped in suffering and in a state of
Exactly.
scarcity.
That's it.
Now, Jesus cries and said, "He who is believing in me is not believing in me, but in him who sends me. And he who is beholding me is beholding him who sends me. I have come into the world a light, that everyone who is believing in me should not be remaining in darkness." I mean, this freedom, right? And one of the reasons why the powers that be don't are scared of it and tremble before it is because it's so liberating. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
a twat, you're going to become a massive twat once you realize the freedom. Like I was watching some of the interviews of Charles Manson, and he's awake. He gets it.
Mm-hmm.
He would say, look, I am the devil, I am God, and all this kind of stuff. And he gets
Mm-hmm.
it. And in
Yeah.
that freedom, he committed atrocities. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying anybody should do that. What I talk about is there are no commands. You become who you are. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just lucky that I the kind of person that I am is accepted in this kind of world. Um, Now Jesus cries and said, he who is believing in me is not believing in me, but in him who sent me. And he who is beholding me is beholding him who sends me. I have come into the world a light, that everyone who is believing in me should not be remaining in darkness. And if ever anyone should be hearing my declarations and not be maintaining them, I am not judging him. For I came not that I should be judging the world, but that I should be saving the world. He who is repudiating me and not getting my declarations has that which is judging him. The word which I speak, that will be judging him in the last day, seeing that I speak not from myself, but the Father who sends me. He has given me the precept, what I may be saying and what I should be speaking. And I am aware that his precept is life aeonian. What then I am speaking, according as the Father has declared it to me, thus am I speaking. I mean, he's there saying that it's not me who gives the belief, it's not just from this, it's my Father.
Mm-hmm.
And if what I say comes to pass, he's judged it as right. But yeah, do
Mm-hmm.
you mind leaving it there?
Yeah, we can leave it there.
Cool, man.
All
I'm on
right,
early
man.
for the rest of the week, so I should be available like on most evenings and that.
Okay, just let me know. I mean, we don't have. We probably got about two more sessions of this. So
Yeah. Well, it goes up to about 20, doesn't it? 21.
does it? Yeah,
Yeah.
21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, we'll see. All right, man.
Yeah. See you, God.
All right, God.